Hello, I'm David D. Cosmo. Welcome to ECTV Live. With me today, as always, Rusty Fender. Rusty?
Hey, good to see you, Dave, and a menagerie.
We have a cast not of thousands, but an interesting cast today, headed by Lorene O'Handley from the Children's Library here in Scranton. And you joined us once before and brought some friends along. I'm always glad to see some friends.
Baby shark, baby shark. The Jaws theme, get it? Bum, 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 bum.
Okay.
All right. On its 45th anniversary, actually, too. Yeah.
That's correct.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. A lot of things happening at the Children's Library, and a lot of them are programs for kids and their parents. As it happens right now, a lot of them are also housekeeping kind of things, which apparently, Lorene, were pretty badly needed.
Yeah, it's an old building, and as with old buildings, things slide a little over the years. And it's also a historical building, so we also, when we make repairs and renovations, they have to maintain the integrity of the building. So the commissioners allocated a certain amount of money to do some of the repairs, and the two that are most outstanding right now are the two new bathrooms for the kids, and they're better than everything. I want to move my office into those bathrooms right now.
And with old buildings, you can't go to the Home Depot to get a lot of parts for things that are 100 years old either.
No, but we did put some child-sized toilets in there with seat covers and all, and they're very pretty bathrooms now and very functional. The other thing was the floors were refinished and repainted.
Now the floors, I recall, in the Children's Library had sort of a map built into it or something like that?
Yes. So what they did was they refinished the floor, they sanded a bit, and they put some new coating varnish down, and then before they did that, they did repaint the murals that are on the floor. So that stayed, because that was done 30 years ago. So,
it was a classic,
very
unique.
It's very unique, and we get tourists coming in frequently. If they're here for other things, they just come into the library and we give them the story, the history of the building.
Beyond its function as a library, it is a classic building, the architecture and such. As a matter of fact, that's another part of it, and before we went on the air, you indicated that's one of the targets. Now, there are gigantic doors on this building.
Heavy doors.
You would not think this is for a children's library because a youngster wouldn't be able to.
It's the way they overbuilt things back in those days. Overbuilt.
Overbuilt. I mean, they're very heavy doors. They've warped over the years due to the elements, and that's one of the things. Another one of the great things is they're going to be taking the doors off one at a time, and sealing off that entrance. Taking the doors down, refinishing them, fixing them, repairing them, and then I'm not quite sure how they're going to do it, but they're going to kind of mechanize it, whether it's with a push button to open them automatically or something like that. So it's not going to be handicap accessible, because we do have that handicap accessibility in the alley.
On the side
where there's a door and an elevator.
But they'll be automated.
They'll be automated in some way so that we don't lose anybody, because sometimes like the parents will go in and the door closes and the child's on the other side. And I mean, I'm getting up there in age, and it's my bursitis or whatever in my right arm. It's hard to open the doors. So that's going to be a really positive thing, that we can get into the building and not fear losing anybody.
I think it's great that it's being done. It's needed, obviously, but also it preserves a treasure in the community.
Yeah, the aesthetics of it.
Yeah, because essentially the buildings are going to look as it always had looked in terms of being classic, really.
Exactly, yeah, and that's the issue too, is that you have to maintain that integrity because it is a historical building.
Sure, and I know you're happy to say it's used. It's well used.
It's very well used. We're finding, it's interesting that we do get a lot of people using it. We've seen an increase in different kinds of people using the library, as the population changes. We've gotten a lot of new families, but we're also losing a lot of families too. Some of them come here because somebody's studying at the U or getting a doctorate. So then when they finish their residency here, then they're moving on to other things. And so that's kind of sad when we lose families like that. But then we always have families coming in, and we'll be starting our Summer Quest program, which we started about 2 years ago with the help of the state, where it's no longer the summer reading program. it's also focusing on reading, but also being active and being helpful in the community. So for example, you could read, you'll still be reading your books, but it'll also be rake your neighbor's garden, or go up to the Everhart Museum, or you know, read to a mouse. So we're trying to get it so that it's more active, less passive, because not every kid is a reader. So sometimes the summer reading club would kind of stop them from wanting to participate. So we added more things, and this is statewide with the libraries. And we found one of the things that we did was we asked, tell a librarian about your summer vacation, or tell the librarian about a book. And we had 2-year-olds telling us. And even though it was mostly us prompting, like, oh, did you go to the beach? Did you go to the lake? Did you go with Grandma and Grandpa? So that was their way of telling. And I actually had a mom tell me that it was the first time her child really opened up because we were asking questions. So it's also showing an interest in what the children are doing. And I found that kids are really responsive to that. They love to show you what they know.
I have to tell you, one of my daughters is a teacher and now at a cyber school, and she teaches kindergarten. And she noted the other day that she's seeing, as she reaches out through the cyber connection, she's finding more and more kids of kindergarten age who have not been read to by their parents.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm really glad you brought that up.
Is that a vanishing
It's kind of, you know what, I've been in libraries for 40 years. I started when I was 17, so add that up, and plus. So I've seen a lot of trends come and go. And I found many years ago, I started noticing that children weren't being as open, they weren't questioning, they weren't coming up and asking for help. And they were showing a lot of tendencies that bothered me, because they were no longer looking you in the eye and asking you a question. And they'd be like this, and they weren't being social. And I attribute that a lot to the video games, the phones,
texting.
and texting.
Absolutely, impersonal.
So, and I'm finding that they don't know how to socialize. Now, I'm not saying this across the board, because it's not everybody.
No.
But I'm finding, being in the field for so many years, I've seen that, and it's very disturbing, because parents are now, it's very disturbing to me when the parents are coming to library programs and then they're on their cell phones and they're not doing what they should be doing with the children. And I have said, all cell phones away. The only time you should be using your cell phone is if you're taking a picture to send to Grandma and Grandpa in Florida. But if you're there making plans for lunch and you're letting your child participate, because in our library programs, we also like to model reading and the reading behaviors for the parents. Because granted, there are parents who maybe haven't had that in their life. Or we have the immigrant families where maybe the parents don't speak English very well, but coming to library story time, if they're listening to their children's stories and then they read the stories in English that are on a younger reading level, that encourages them more because they're doing it for their children. And there's no shame in that because it's for their kids. But kids not reading and not reading out loud, and parents also have to model that behavior.
What home, back when I was growing up, and as I became a parent myself, what home didn't have several golden books?
Right.
There, and some of the traditional stories that you'd read about. I was just had my 3.5-year-old grandson at home, and through my interest, he's into trains.
Oh yeah.
And I mentioned to him the story of the little engine that could.
Did he know that?
What is that? Well, I actually I didn't have that book physically, so I went to, I guess, YouTube, and at least found a video of that story. And he's intrigued by it. And now when he stops by, one of the things he has to see
is that book.
Is that video. And if I can pick up that book, we'll get into it. My other problem, of course, is that I make up my own stories. And that's fine, except that as I deliver it, and he comes back the next week and asks me about that story, I don't remember exactly what I said.
Well, it's different
so I've got to write it down.
But I think too, I think it has a lot to do with the family. I was an only child. My mother was a school teacher her whole life. My father was in charge of A&P supermarkets, and they were never home, although my mother took like 13 years off to stay home and raise me. I never had a babysitter or a daycare in my life, but I didn't get read a lot too because
Really?
of the because and especially being a very highly literate person, my mother being a teacher.
Yeah.
But come to think of it, I learned a lot on my own or watching television in those days.
Yeah.
But I think it depends on the family situation.
Yeah,
I think if you have more kids, I think you have a better chance.
Well, there were 6 of us growing up.
See,
and every night it was my father's job.
That's what I mean.
He got this book. It said 365 short stories. So every night we got one of those 365.
Yeah, right.
And he never did finish reading Wind of the Willows to us. But we were always read to. We always had books around the house. And there was one time my brother went up to get a copy of Rolling Stone magazine at the local corner. It used to be a soda fountain. It's not there anymore. To get Rolling Stone magazine and Mad magazine. And the guy wouldn't sell it to my brother because he was like 9. And he goes, well, my dad sent me for it. So we were reading Esquire magazine and things that were really, now that I know, they weren't appropriate for us, but we were never told we couldn't read anything. And what we didn't understand just went over our heads and we got what we could. And I think that's one of the things when we're doing story time is we model and we show the parents, not by hitting them over the head with it, but just saying, you're holding, excuse me, Mr. Shark, by holding the book this way and turning the pages and pointing to the different things. And even just pointing and talking about what you see in the pictures, because that's all language development for the children.
Sure,
Singing to them is language development, the rhythm and the rhyme. Also, children are never too old to be read to, because one of my sons hated reading, and he was a good oral learner. He could tell you everything. He just hated reading. He was too energetic, and it took too much energy for him to sit. But when he heard things, and when we read, he picked up on it really fast.
Sure.
And there was one word in a book. It was Brian's. No, it wasn't Brian's songs. That's the football story.
Right.
Oh, Hatchet by Gary Paulson, and the word cascade was in there, and I asked him, I said, do you know what cascade means? He goes, yeah, Mom, it's like a waterfall. But I think if he hadn't heard that,
right, he would not have recognized
he would have not recognized it because he couldn't sound it out. So it's still important to read out loud as a family, even just passing the book around or a magazine or reading the box of cereal, because we have a really big problem in Scranton and in a lot of the state and other countries, not other countries, other communities, where children aren't receiving everything they need to go on to 4th grade. And if you haven't learned and gotten reading down by 3rd grade, you're pretty well lost. And it's very hard to catch up if you haven't developed those reading and language skills by 3rd grade. And right now, we're trying to help with that at the library by, with United Way, Success by 6 with Lisa Baradelli, is we're trying to get programs together at the library where we can help children and parents. We want to offer programs on Common Core math to help the parents understand how the math is today, because it's certainly different. I can do the math, but I would get marked wrong because I'm not showing how to do it and have all these fancy stories. We also want to do something, we have something called Every Child Ready to Read, where we can talk to the parents and say, give them some guidance on how to help. But I don't think you should be forcing children to learn how to read, because sometimes they're not physically able.
It should be an interest.
There should be an interest in pointing at the words and that.
Right.
But I mean,
and
sitting down with
if you're picking out
flash.
the right stories,
Right.
they're going to be interested, because the
Right.
story itself will get them interested.
Will get them
Exactly.
interested, and I think that's another.
It's a generational thing too. I knew how to read. I was reading from like the Wall Street Journal at age 4. It was unbelievable. And then
You pick out the words you knew.
Yeah, and I knew the state capitals by like 5. They don't do that anymore.
No,
That's
because
passé.
that's rote. That's rote
It is, it's
memorization.
rote, exactly.
And they say there's no use for that. But I could still, my 18-year-old daughter, I have a 34-year-old son, and I have 5 children. The 34-year-old could still do his timetables like that.
Yep.
The 18-year-old
So
can't,
absolutely.
because they weren't taught to memorize.
And now with math, like you said, you round it off. You're adding 10 and 18, you add the 18 to 20, and then you deduct the 2. It's so convoluted, but
well,
that is
that's
the
it.
new
And
math.
and I
Everything's
say,
rounded
why
to the
can't you
nearest-
just memorize it?
It's called binary. If you have 10 plus 8, you round, you make 10 plus another 10. And you remember that you add a 2 to it to deduct the 2 at the end, you get 18.
So why can't you just remember 20 minus 2 is 18?
Because it's not about the total anymore, it's about the process to get there.
Finding the total.
Exactly,
Yeah.
the process to get there.
Well, we're hoping to have some programs at the library to help people with this confusion, and you know, with that, and offering other kinds of programs too, because we see that people aren't coming into the library the way they used to. And I don't know whether they feel there's no need to because we have nothing to offer them, or that, oh, you could get whatever you want on the internet, so you don't need libraries. But for us, the library is also a social meeting place where families can come together.
Hence the characters.
Hence the characters. I mean,
because you make good use of props.
Props.
If I may.
Yeah. And these are real to the children. And it allows them to have an imagination. And just the other day, I did a video with Cal, our signature puppet. I put my cell phone in his mouth. And he did a bird's eye view from the puppet theater. So he was looking at all the children there, and every time Miss Angela asked him a question, he shook his head up and down. Well, we got so many responses to that, and 3 people said, Cal, you're making me dizzy, hold still. So I just responded as Cal. I said, well, this was my first time doing this. I'll know better next time, but it was hard to answer Miss Angela's questions with a phone in my mouth. But you know what? The kids love it. The parents love it. And we were told by some grandparents that they were glad we didn't use technology in our story times, because some people do use a tablet and for the music, and which is great. We have to transfer to that because we're still using CDs. But some people use tablets for the story time. And Miss Angela did that one day. She used a tablet to play a matching game, and some of the parents said that they enjoyed coming to our story times because we don't do that.
You use the book.
We use the book.
Yeah.
We use, Angela has made these wonderful old school flannel boards that have texture. She lets the children pick them up. And that's all part of learning, is learning how to pick things up. They need to know with their fine motor skills, their gross motor skills. And if everything is a touch and swipe, then they don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
I saw a 2-year-old trying to swipe the pages of a book. Mm-hmm. Because she was so used to swiping on a tablet, and she's sitting there trying to do that. And I'm thinking, this is sad.
Yeah.
This is really sad. So we're doing.
And it's not that you do one or the other.
Right.
Because they're going to have the technology.
Right.
The kids will use it now. They're far advanced, far more than I am, to use it. So to say, well, you just can't do it, that's unrealistic.
You're right.
It is.
It's
going to be
unrealistic.
used.
That's right.
The point is to work them both in.
Exactly.
And merge them where you can. I think that's now. What kind of age group are you talking about that come in to see these? And
Actually,
how often do you do it?
We do it. We do a Mother Goose program for babies from birth to about 2, and we
Okay.
sit on the floor. We call that a lap wrap. And we sit on the floor and we sing the songs, the Mother Goose songs. We do clapping with the puppets. And then at 2 years old, they graduate from the Mother Goose to the Tales for Tots, which is 2s and 3s. And that's a formal story time. It's about 20 minutes long because that's about their attention span. That's about my attention span and the other people's attention span. But we do 20 minutes of stories, a flannel board, sometimes some creative movement. And then we have the puppet show. And Cal has been, I don't dare bring him here because the magic would totally be lost.
Oh.
Cal does not make appearances.
I see.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. One of these days I'll bring him, provided he has the proper accommodations. Okay?
So you consider it extremely important to have the props in conjunction with the book and hands-on as well, where possible?
Yes, because in all our programs, we leave everything out for the kids to play with. And so, and then we do the 2s and 3s, and then we have the 3, 4s, and 5s, and it's the same setup, but the stories are a little bit longer. And after the program and after the craft, then we have a carpet on the floor where the children have free play. So the program starts at 10:30, and we don't have parents leaving until 12. And the nice thing is that we get a lot of new people coming in, so it's their first time coming in. Then they meet other parents in the community, and they make friends, and then they go to McDonald's or they go to NAOG, and they do some exploring. But you know, parents are the children's first and best teachers, And I think that's where we have to kind of hit it with parents, is to let them know, talk to your babies, talk to your children, just chatter all the time. And I'll tell the parents, I say, don't ever let me catch you in Wegmans with your earbuds in when you're around all that beautiful produce, because you should be talking about the oranges and the yellow bananas and the round apples. And you don't need to go to Gymboree or, you know, I shouldn't say that, but you don't need to pay a lot of money for these things. You walk on the yellow lines in a parking lot. You hop over the cement parking things, or you go up into Abington in their park and you jump over stumps.
I'm laughing because the same grandson that I talk about, he enjoys, because I showed him, throwing a rock into the water. Just
what fun is
the
that?
simple joy of that. But we were at a rock and gem show for the weekend, and I saw all these beautiful rocks, and I thought, oh boy, I better be careful what he's picking up.
Yeah, because he might be wanting to skip some rocks.
This is a tough era, I think, and again, I know nothing about kids, but you know, this is like the handoff era now, where you hand off the difference between reading road maps. When you ask somebody, you know how to read a road map, you know which way is north and south, and they say, why would I? I have GPS on my phone. Why would I need a road map? Why would I need how to type when I can dictate?
Right.
You know, why would I learn how to?
Good points.
This is like the handoff where the new meets the old,
right?
The quasi-old. And this is a tough time. You got to play both sides of the field.
You do,
and you do with your classic approach to that.
Yeah, and we're not anti-technology by any means, but it's also showing parents another way to be using technology. I mean, the saddest thing I find is, like, we had a library program, and a parent had a baby. I couldn't have been more than 6 months old, at a library program, in a baby seat with a phone, watching that phone.
Oh boy. That
young. And you know, there's a book, I can't remember the name of it, but it's about children's brains and their wiring. And now you'll probably find out more now because I'm hearing it. Children's brains are differently wired now than ours were because of all the technology. You might notice their attention spans are shorter because they flip through everything so quickly.
That's a good point.
And they're being wired differently, so they can't. Maybe they can't sit through a 45-minute class anymore because they're used to doing everything fast and quick and then it's over. But then I also think, how much are they retaining from what they see there? Because like a book is a very tactile experience. I mean, I don't put books, I say, oh, I have to taste, see, and smell it first. And, you know, a computer screen, it's not the same feeling. And, you know, again, not to put down, I mean, I use technology.
Sure.
It's made my job, I think, a little bit more cumbersome because now everything's coming through so quickly. But I think, I don't know, like you said, there has to be a happy medium with the two.
And there's some things you can't change. Imagine going in this generation now for a job. If you walked in with a resume in your hand, they'd call security. You got to do everything online, from McDonald's to the president of a library association. Well, and then it's got to be done that way. It's
got to be done that way. And unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of seniors who are looking for new jobs.
Exactly.
They're coming into the library. Number one, they don't have a computer. Number two, they don't have an email.
That's right.
So they're coming in to do all these job applications online, and they don't have any computer skills.
I know.
And I think that's doing a disservice to a whole group of people who do want jobs, but because they have to go through this, and they do come to the library.
And isn't that ironic that you still get back to the library for the basics? You think, you know, when I was a kid, you thought of the library, you went there to get a book. As you got a little older, maybe you had to get a book there to study something for a report.
Right.
But now you can go there, you can learn how to work a computer.
Yes.
You can actually learn how to do a resume.
And that's a good thing, because they're the folks with the answers for an older folk who doesn't know what a smartphone is.
Well, and we get a lot of that. And we have Adam, who works in the computer lab, who's phenomenal. He actually troubleshooted somebody's sewing machine. It was an electronic sewing machine, and it didn't work. So he said it took him a while because he read the manual, but he actually got it working. So, and especially after Christmas, we my kids, they bought me an iPad. I don't even know what to do with it. So can you help me? So we do have drop-by call-ins where if you want to bring something in that you're having trouble with, he will do one-on-ones with you.
I think it's important that we focus just for the last couple of minutes on the children's library and the fact that you still are taking books and reading books to kids and encouraging them to look at them, to touch them. pardon me, the use of the characters, the associate with a particular book or something like that. What about, you mentioned the various programs you have, Success by Six and things like this. Where can anybody who's watching go to find out what programs you have when they're offered? Well,
you can go into the Lackawanna County Library System homepage, Lackawanna County Library, LCLS Home. And that lists all the libraries, and then you can just click on Lackawanna County Children's Library, and then that'll bring up all the programs. And we do put a calendar on there, a PDF calendar that you could print out and put on your refrigerator, old school, because a lot of people still do that. But we're finding too that people are contacting us a lot through Facebook now, so that's a whole nother thing. That we, I'm at home and all of a sudden, bing, bing, bing. And I say, okay, but I'm not working today. But
you're always working in this age. You're
always
on
working.
the clock.
But we finally got smart and said, we will respond to this during our working hours.
That's right.
But so that's where they can find it. We started a program about 2 years ago called Cruise into Kindergarten. And it's to help get children ready for kindergarten if they haven't had the opportunity to go to a preschool. And just by word of mouth, we filled up our first session already. So, so there is a need, and it's all free.
You pretty much said it's from babies in arms
we go up to 6th grade in our building, and then they make the transition next door for the young adults. So we could be with the same children from birth all the way to 12 years old, and it's amazing. I just get the shivers because we've had so many good things. We've done an open mic night for the kids. You wouldn't believe the talent, and I know that we have the talent with the big people, but I wanted to prove that we have talent with the little kids. And we had one little boy who could not sit for his life for story time. Mother brought him in every week, could not sit. As soon as we started with the music, he was right back with the music. He came in, open mic night, he's 9 years old now. He danced to Michael Jackson, complete with the moonwalk, and I just went up and hugged him. I said, that's because he came to Toddlers on the Move when he was 4. But it just gives you such a good sense of, I never wanted to be a teacher. I taught for 2 years, was not my thing. I don't have the stick-to-itiveness. I think I would have been one of those people who said, I don't know why she's teaching. But I love what I do because it's such a variety. I can deal with the babies, I can deal with the grandparents.
And it shows, and I don't want to, as we close,
I'm sorry.
I don't want to skip over one important thing that you said that we could almost miss. All these things available at the library, and the cost is?
Free.
Okay, well, that's a price you can't beat, folks.
And we're open 7 days a week. We're free. Get a library card. If you have a library card, please renew it, because those statistics mean a lot. If our libraries, all the libraries, are not used, funding will be cut, and that's the way the story is these days.
And it works the other way. If you use them, the funding becomes available. Lorraine, thank you.
Thanks,
thank you. I'm so glad I made it.
Glad to have you here.
We are too.
Rusty, thank you so much.
Thank you,
and
David.
Mark
Thanks,
McClory,
Mark.
thanks for keeping us on focus as always. I'm David DeCosmo for ECTV Live. Till we see you again next time, here's hoping all your news is good.